This is the Magic 3D block template for fussy cutting printed fabric. You'll notice when you see your pattern that you have instructions for the advanced layout. And this is what's on the picture, so you can recognize it. The advanced layout means you need to cut prints out from pre-printed fabric, but you want to have a seam allowance so that when they join up, you have an exact fit. So what you're doing is fussy cutting the right and the left from two different prints of the same thing. If you look at the ruler, you'll see that there's a rectangular area with the dotted lines, and then there's a smaller square area with the solid lines. These examples show you where this is from a very busy fabric, but the prints are joining up in the center in 12 different pictures. This fabric also was very nice because it had 12 different pictures and a nice center image of it, about 3.5 inches. Your outside dimension is actually 4 inches, which you want to have something that fits slightly inside of that. In this case, the images weren't as many, so that I didn't use them on every side of the block. I just used some coordinating colors and then put some snowmen on this side as well. It's important to find the appropriate fabric. You want to make sure you have repeats. You also want to make sure you've got an image that's a good size. When you lay your ruler over the top, you know that the inside dark line, that's going to be the image that shows on the face of your block. The outside will be the cutting seam allowance. And as usually happens with printed fabrics, they're kind of distorted. You know, this, although it's supposed to be square, is clearly not. You may want to take it to the iron and square up as much as you can before you start your cutting. So this is an excellent fabric and actually has 12 different pictures. This snowman fabric is really good. There aren't 12, but you don't have to have a snowman on every base of your block. I have this fabric here, which is also really nice. There's a little more waste, and there aren't quite 12, but I'll be able to use some of these printed sections for some pieces on some of the sides. You can see that my picture itself fits within the 4-inch dimension of my sew lines. This particular block is not as nice because the images are a little bit too small. When I put my ruler down on it, I'm getting a lot of other printed images along with it. You can see with this block, it's still cute, but it's not as nice as if the image were to fill the entire face of the block. So finding the appropriate fabric means laying it out and looking to see how many repeats you have of a certain image. So, for example, I want to cut this snowman, and I want this one to be on the side of my block. And I need to know how many of that snowman that I need. Your pattern shows you. It shows you 12 different layouts and how many pieces of each that you need. In this case, I only need 2. So what I do is I find one image, make sure I have a second one. In this case, I do. I'm going to center my ruler so that my diagonal center is roughly the center of my image. I want to have space above, space below, and in this case there's ample space on either side. First thing I'm going to do is mark, in this case, the right edge. So I go approximately where this dotted line ends. I'm using a pen because what I'm marking is a cutting line. The pen shows well on this fabric, but you can use whatever it is you find is appropriate. Pencils work well, sometimes coloring pencils or other kinds of markers. Now what I'm marking is the outside edge of the ruler because that's going to be the cutting line. The inside edge is my other cutting line. I'm going to flip the ruler around. I'm going to line this cutting line up with the line that I marked. And I'm going to line the top and the bottom up with the lines also that I marked. Now I'm going to draw in my second line. The inside dark line is actually my sewing edge, but the outside one is my cutting edge. The difference is my seam allowance, and you'll see how that happens for the second piece. So I've cut this piece out. I'm going to find another image that's the same. You'll notice that if I had cut the entire piece out, I would be cutting into other images. But since I didn't do that, I may be able to use that image for part of another snowman later. Take the piece that I've cut and I lay it out exactly over the top of another one. Make sure everything lines up exactly the way it should. And now I lay my ruler over the edge that I cut. And the first thing that I'm going to mark is this outside edge, the outside of the ruler. I'm going to remove this piece, and I'm going to line this inside cutting edge on the outside of the line that I just marked, and also the top and the bottom. Now I'll finish marking, and I'm going to cut this piece out next. So you can see this is starting to look like Swiss cheese. As I find more and more snowmen that I want to cut out. And my two hats. I have a 3/8 seam allowance around all edges. And I have some 2x4 pieces of freezer paper. I start by the shiny side out, center it on my first piece, and just finger press to start. I'm going to finger press 2 edges, because once 2 edges are correct, the other ones will be exactly right as well. And flip that over as well, and just finger press. I can press these with the iron. I just don't happen to have one here handy, but you would then press these and stick these down. In order to get my second one to line up, I have to put my freezer paper inside, not only on the edge so that it lines up, but also at the top. This sometimes takes a little bit of trial and error, but the easiest thing to do, see how I see the fold there? I want to make sure my fold is in the same spot. See, I've got part of the scarf, I've got all the buttons. See that one? I see the same image here as I see there. And I want to check the top. I fold this over. Probably don't have right enough, so I'm going to slide this up a tiny bit. See if I'm still the same. Give it a finger press. And this one. Now, before I actually press it with the iron, I'm just going to test it. I can see that my top is off. Do you see that? I'm going to adjust that little piece down a little bit. If I had pressed it with the iron already, it would have been a little trickier to adjust at this point. You can see that your file prep for doing the advanced layout is just a little fussier. This makes it worth your while if you have it lining up exactly. Let's see how that looks now. And it looks like we're good. So at this point you press your pieces on all sides and you're ready to do your layout. Your instructions for sewing your fussy cut pieces are identical to the basic layout, and you'll see that on your pattern.